Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're pleased to see you here. So we just wanted to give you Barco's view on ergonomics and human factors really in the control room, and a little bit of information about what Barco does to really transform that workplace, to really make it work better for the operators that work within control centers. Within my time at Barco, which is only 3.5 years, I've certainly seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of control rooms. So hopefully we'll cover off some of the problems that we see and the solutions that we offer. Whenever we think of ergonomics, I think we all think of, strange-looking keyboards with cushions on them, mice that look weird with balls out the side of them, and that kind of thing. But actually, it's a really important topic. And the most crucial thing is quite basic. For a desk-based role like an operator, you need to be sat in the right place. So you need a keyboard and mouse directly in front of you. Your monitor should be in the right position in front of you. And that just avoids those common workplace injuries we see. And in fact, around 31% of all the injuries that we see in the workplace are caused by these repetitive motions and overexertion, often caused by poor ergonomics at your desk position. The consequences of that really are quite obvious. Obviously, you can experience pain, and in some cases, you would even need medical assistance, and in the worst cases, you would require surgery. In the US, for example, 400,000 treatments a year are carried out for carpal tunnel. And, it's not just a horrendous experience for the employees, it's actually a costly experience for the employers as well. Compensation can often be anything from 30 to 70,000 per case. So obviously it's something that we need to avoid for the well-being of operators in control rooms, but also for the smooth running of any organization. And next, we're going to talk about, what happens in particular in control rooms. What are the areas of concern that we have in terms of ergonomics as we see it? Well, vision, of course, is hugely important in a control center. Often you're in front of various desktop-based displays, but also you've got a large video wall in front of you as well to look at throughout the day. And as we said before, it's really important that these are in the right position and work ergonomically for you. And that leads me on to your neck and any strain you might have. You may have to constantly look in a certain direction or lean over to a certain position. Doing that repetitively can cause issues. We spoke about carpal tunnel syndrome, and fingers and wrist injuries are also quite common. If you're doing repeated motions at keyboards and mice, you will often see that. And one of the things you'll see on the picture here is that we've got one operator that effectively has several positions. So they've got lots of keyboards, lots of mice, lots of displays, all of which they need to be able to move to and take control at any given moment. But that doesn't necessarily work well ergonomically, and it might mean you're having to wheel your chair up and down that desk all day long, which isn't conducive to good ergonomics, really. And I think ergonomics is something, that we all have an interaction with. We all have experiences with good and bad ergonomics throughout our daily lives. And I just wanted to give you an example here. So if this was a real event, you would all know by now that I'm a bit of a mutant because I'm 6'6" or 2 meters tall. So I am fairly tall. And as such, years ago, I used to be a vacuum cleaner salesman, which I think is probably one worse than an estate agent. But that said, loved the job and spent lots of time in the car visiting various customers. Unfortunately, I was driving quite a small car, and over time I just developed all these headaches and backaches, and it just turned out to be that position that I was in that car for all that time. Now, the consequences of that weren't bad at all. I mean, it was literally just I might have arrived at a meeting with a backache, but there was no real consequences, and of course it was easily solved with a different driving position in a different car. But what I wanted to share with you is perhaps a more serious consequence of poor ergonomics, and that's the story of one of my colleagues, Jordan. Now, Jordan years ago was working in a data entry role for an organization. And because obviously she spent lots of time in front of displays, developed eye strain over time. So had shooting pains, headaches, that kind of thing. And ultimately, the treatment was for that was to rest her eyes, and one in particular. So she had to come to work dressed as a pirate, wearing a patch on one eye, but carried on regardless, as you do. But the issue was made worse because obviously if you're only viewing content or information on the screen with one eye, obviously it's less clear than it would otherwise be. But compounded to that, Jordan also happened to have the wrong glasses prescription at the time. So as you can see, things were pretty fuzzy on her screen. But she soldiers on, as a lot of us do. And of course, she was very confident. She's familiar with the database and the systems that she's using. So she carried on. And of course, didn't want to take any unnecessary days off. But I think you all know where I'm going with this, that ultimately a human error occurred, as it often does. And essentially, a huge amount of kit was sent to completely the wrong location. And that obviously caused, additional admin, custom fees, transport fees, etc. So something, you would be keen to avoid. Now, just to make sure that you're all still awake at this point, we thought we'd find out about your own experiences. So hopefully a poll should have showed up on your displays. So have you ever experienced any pains at work, perhaps in your hands, your wrists, your head or eyes, your neck and shoulders, or your legs or knees? Or this one is probably going to be the most common, which is pains from your boss. I know I've struggled with that in the past. So if you can all enter your responses now, that would be great. We'll just give you a few seconds longer and enjoy another awkward silence.
There is a submit button, so once you've selected your option, do press the submit.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, give it a few seconds more. All right, I think we'll move on to the results. And surprisingly, all your managers are obviously clearly very nice people because, chief among which is the neck and shoulder injuries, which is, incredibly common. And we do see lots of people with back injuries and that kind of thing as well. So that ties in with what we thought. Now, moving on, we've talked about what happens if you're a vacuum cleaner salesman or if you're entering data into a system. But of course, unfortunately, in critical control centers, human error really can be absolutely disastrous. And in fact, 23% of unplanned downtime in manufacturing is caused by user error. So this is a big problem. Now, of course, when disasters unfortunately occur, what do? Well, we look for something or someone to blame. And whilst it's important to find out, what went wrong so we can avoid it in the future, at Barco, we really think it's important at that point to bring a solution. And really, if you're not focusing on ergonomic factors and making control centers work for operators, then really you're setting those operators up to fail. Now, change isn't necessarily easy, but there are lots of options out there. And typically, most people will look at things like this, so more comfortable seating, keyboards, as I say, with cushions on, laid out ergonomically, strange-looking mice, and even standing desks. But not necessarily all of these work in a control room environment. A standing desk, for example, isn't always possible if you've got a large video wall to view. And if we take a look at what some other organizations are doing, I don't think we can really apply Google's breakout logic to critical control centers. I really don't think that's going to work at all. So at Barco, what do we think is the answer? Well, we think we can transform operator workflows to make it far more comfortable, far more efficient. And we do that with a product we have called OpSpace. And what OpSpace really does is tackles those problems that we see so commonly in so many control centers. Here we have an example of an operator who has the classic case, which is multiple monitors, loads of keyboards, loads of mice, and somehow they have to manage everything that's going on and keep an eye on all of the information that is in that place. And you can see here as well in this picture that they've actually put a mat down on the floor. And that's because this poor operator has to wheel up and down that desk all day long, which of course isn't great for his legs, his knees, his posture, and generally for ergonomics. And of course, it's not efficient either. So, how can we get around that? Well, we have, as I say, a product called Opspace, which just looks to completely remove all of that desktop clutter that I've just talked about there. That all disappears, and you're left with a clean workspace that works ergonomically. So we have a keyboard and a mouse right in front of you, and you have your own mini video wall if you like. So you can have a number of monitors in front of you, and all of those sources, all of that information that we just saw on that previous slide is all on those monitors. So you create your own layout, and you also have your own workspace where you can take control of any of those sources at the click of a button. And all of it is, as we say, virtually there. So you really feel as if you're directly in contact with whatever source it is you're using. And the lack of latency really also improves those repetitive motions and reduces the risk of injury there, because what you're doing is you're not constantly clicking on something because it's not reacting. It really reacts just as you would expect it to. So if we move on, something else that Barco is probably quite well known for in the market and really does set us apart is our interoperability. We can integrate with so many other systems that are present in the control center. And as such, if we take an example here, this operator has a number of displays in front of him. But if he needs to take control of something, or if there's an incident, he's got to keep looking in his peripheral vision just to check everything's okay. And that's not great for your neck. It's not great for your eyes. So what can we do with technology to get around that? Well, if there's an incident or something detected that needs the attention of an operator, we can use our APIs to automatically bring that source right in front of them when they need it. That makes the operator more efficient and just means they can take control at exactly the right time with the right information. If we move on, we realize, of course, that it's not just technology that makes ergonomics work in a control center. And actually, Barco works with a number of our ecosystem partners who develop amazing solutions which go above and beyond the Barco technology to provide a comfortable working environment. So for example, we have a desk here that can raise and is suitable for every operator that comes into the room. So we really do make sure it's as comfortable as possible. Something else that we're now able to do with technology that we weren't able to do years ago is actually move around the room. And a system like Opspace is user-based, so it's completely personal to you. You create your own layout, you have access to your own information, your own sources, and that stays with your user. So effectively, you could come into your shift in the morning, as an example, and work in one position, but in the afternoon, you might choose to work at a different position. And this just gives you a whole new viewpoint, a whole new perspective on the room. And the idea behind that is it's reducing those repetitive movements. So you're not constantly looking in one direction at the video wall because you're sitting somewhere else. And previously, without this technology, that was a really difficult thing to achieve in control centers. Something else that's often not thought about when we talk about ergonomics is the general environment in the room. And one of the things that we can do with technology is to remove heat and noise. So as control centers expand over the years, typically more and more systems come into the room that operators need to control. Now, that's not necessarily a problem, but when these systems come in, they often come in with their own hardware, their own PCs, for example. They normally get get shoved under the operator desk and left alone, really. And of course, that's generating noise and heat. What we can do with OpSpace is take away all of that hardware that doesn't need to be in the control center, either virtualize it or put it in a secure server room away from the control center to make that as comfortable as possible for the operators that work there. And the next piece of technology is kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to ergonomics, because, of course, we have large video wall displays in most control centers. They're hugely important because they give everyone in the room a common operational picture. And, of course, they make every control room look like Minority Report. But essentially, there are a number of ways that Barco has worked to make this more comfortable for operators within the room. So, for example, we're quite unique in our direct view LED technology. Now, we saw that in the previous slides from Sean, that's a real growth area, and it's a technology that we've really been working on to ensure that it's best suited to control room environments. And one of the things we've done is we've used a unique algorithm to drive each and every LED module, and we drive them in such a way that it makes it far more comfortable for your eyes, reducing that eye fatigue. What we can also do is manage the color and the brightness output of that video wall. So to give you an example, we can match the color temperature of the video wall to the color temperature of the desktop displays, as an example. So that way your eyes haven't got to constantly adjust between the two different displays. We can also dim down the video wall so that it suits the ambient light level of the control room. I mean, we've all seen LED walls which look great in lobby spaces, but actually that would be far too bright for a control center. So we can reduce that brightness to make it more comfortable, but crucially, because of the unique way we drive LED, we can keep all of the detail, all of that image information stays, so you're not having to strain to look at the content on the video wall. The other thing that we've worked really hard to achieve is great viewing angles. So no matter where you are positioned in that control center, you can clearly see all of the information on the video wall at any one time. And really, just to give you a bit of a summary, what we're looking to do with all the technology is really ensure that operators can view everything that they need to easily, and that it's not difficult for them to do that. We also want to make the control room an environment where it's quick and it's easy for everyone to share crucial information. And with a system like OpSpace that's centralized, you can very easily do that. And of course, ultimately, what is a control room there for? Well, it's to solve any issues that come up. It's to manage your business and resolve everything quicker. So that's really what we do with our technology. And with that, I will thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in any of the technology we've mentioned, of course, please reach out to us. You can see all the communications channels there. We've got some information on the ICRA website as well. Thank you very much.